In this video, we'll show you a very powerful and effective technique of speeding up your WordPress website and improving your score on Google's Pagespeed Insights and any other website performance testing tool. What we'll focus on are the Google fonts. We'll show you why it's extremely beneficial to host them locally and just how easy it is to do that with WordPress. Let's just outline the fact that the ICDSoft hosting servers are among the best in the industry in terms of performance for WordPress. ICDSoft was recently rated by none other than Review Signal as one of the 10 best WordPress hosts. You can see some of the popular names that didn't make the cut, while the start companies are the ones that did make the top 10. And that's our profile, and you can find out more about our excellent results at wphostingbenchmarks.com, which is a Review Signal company. But despite how fast our servers are, you can still further improve the load times of your WordPress installation by locally hosting your Google fonts. First off, let's quickly review what Google fonts are. You can go to fonts.google.com and you can see this is a huge list of fonts you can choose from. If you click on a given one, you can download it locally to your computer, and if you go to the FAQ section, you would get the answers to the questions you're probably asking yourself right now. Is there a cost for any of these fonts? No, all Google fonts are open source and are without cost. Can I use any font in a commercial product? Yes, you can use them commercially and even include them within a product that is sold commercially. So this is all great news. At the bottom of the page, you would notice that the Google Fonts library currently contains 1,429 open source font families. So these are fonts owned by Google, hosted on their servers, but they've given people the rights to use them for free. Given that the Google Fonts collection is super extensive and contains virtually every typographic style there is, and over 135 different languages are represented, it's no surprise that they've been heavily used by developers and web designers from all over the world. In turn, a lot of WordPress teams nowadays make use of Google Fonts, but as great as they are, their use does come at a certain cost, as there are a couple of drawbacks. The first one being a violation of European GDPR laws. You may wonder just how could using Google Fonts via Google service possibly cause GDPR issues? Well, as Google normally does, when a font is requested by the user's browser, their IP is locked by Google and used for analytics. The second issue with Google Fonts, and it's actually our main focus here, is the performance degradation that's caused by the use of such externally hosted resources. Basically, since the Google fonts are hosted on Google servers, your site has to make requests for these fonts to the servers, wait for a response, and only then it will be able to load the actual fonts. All of that typically happens in under a second, but it's still something you can completely remove and thus lower the total load time for your pages. All the major performance metric tools such as GTmetrix, Pagespeed Insights, and Pingdom will give you a red flag for using externally hosted resources, and this will ultimately result in slower load times and a lower performance score. Let's run a quick test with our hosting restarter website we covered in our previous video, and let's see how it fares on Google's Pagespeed Insights. Make sure to enter the exact site URL of your WordPress installation, as any additional redirects will lower your overall score. So we would enter https www.hectohost.com, analyze, and you can see that we're getting a good performance score on mobile. But let's focus on the opportunities section below, expand the eliminate render block and resources category, and among these resources are the actual requests for Google fonts. As you can see, we have two resources that are loaded externally from fonts.google.com. The first one is the Poppins font, and the second one is the Roboto font. And these are in fact the two main fonts we used when designing the website. So the big question is how to host Google fonts locally and not request them from external servers. First, there is the manual method, where you would download all your necessary Google fonts from fonts.google.com, upload them to your server, and then add them to your theme's CSS. Afterwards, you would have to apply custom CSS in every section where you like to use that font, so this method is more suitable for web developers or at least users that have a certain level of experience in CSS, HTML, and WordPress in general. That's why we'll suggest an easier approach, and it's based on using a plugin. Now, if you go to your WordPress dashboard, plugins, add new, and make a search for Google fonts, you'd see there are a number of different plugins for this job. The most popular one appears to be Fonts plugin, with over 200,000 active installations. I tested it, but the option to host Google Fonts locally is only available with their paid version. That's why the one I'll use for this job is OMGF. Just a quick caution note right here. OMGF will work for most sites, but there are some themes and plugins that make it difficult to retrieve Google font data, so results may vary. Should you decide to use this plugin, make sure to test your website afterwards to make sure that all your fonts load correctly. Back to the plugin's description. OMGF automatically caches the Google fonts used by your theme plugins locally. No configuration or brains required. Okay, that's definitely the one we need then. Let's install it and of course activate it. The description explicitly stated no configuration, so let's go back to the Google's PSI and run the test again. You can see that our page score is now higher, and under the Eliminate Render Block and Resources category, the requests to Google Fonts are no longer listed. So we managed to host our Google Fonts locally with just a couple of clicks using the OMGF plugin for WordPress. If you want to see a video on taking care of the other opportunities and diagnostic issues reported by Google's PSI and get a grade A score, let us know in the comments below, subscribe, and thank you for watching.